Have you ever looked at something and thought, how are you not dead yet? No, I'm not talking about Dragon Age. I'm talking about Resident Evil.
Resident Evil.
A series that didn't just rise from the ashes like a phoenix, it basically clawed itself out of its grave like a zombie. The survival of Resident Evil came down to this: either change or you die. Somehow it changed just in time.
What the hell is this thing?
Before the reinventions, before the comebacks, Resident Evil started somewhere simple: slow, claustrophobic horror. Resident Evil didn't begin as an action blockbuster, it began in the dark. The first 3 games were slow, claustrophobic, and deliberately uncomfortable. Fixed camera angles, tank controls, limited ammo, puzzles that felt like the mansion itself was laughing at you. Everything was designed to make you feel small and helpless. RE1 was raw. It built the foundation with tight spaces, eerie silence, and the constant fear that something was waiting just outside the frame. You didn't play as heroes, you played as the prey. The whole point was simple: you're slow, you're fragile, and you have about 3 bullets. Congratulations, your lunch. Now RE2 took that formula and injected pure chaos into it. Bigger city, more zombies, 2 intertwining stories, and a tone that made you feel like the world was ending in real time. It wasn't just a sequel, it was a statement that Resident Evil could level up without losing its core. RE2 wasn't just bigger, it proved the franchise could actually scale without becoming stupid. And that brings us to Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Capcom looked at players and said, "So you think you're safe?" Cute. And then they dropped Nemesis, a creature whose entire life purpose was to ruin yours. A stalker enemy that didn't care about you, your ammo, or your mental breakdowns. He can chase you, he can follow you, he can sprint, and he can open doors. Can you believe that? This guy forces you to think fast, he forces you to panic and hope that maybe, just maybe, you would be able to outrun him. These 3 games built the identity of survival horror: slow pace, tight tension, actual fear. And if the franchise had stayed like this forever, we would not be having this conversation right now. Code Veronica still carried the classic style forward, but now the formula was really getting pretty stale. Capcom even refined the original with the 2002 remake, proving survival horror could still feel modern. This was followed by Resident Evil 0, a game that serves as a prequel to 1, taking place quite literally a day before the events of 1. RE0 pushed the old style as far as it could go, but the cracks were starting to show. The franchise definitely needed change. And then we did get some spin-offs like Resident Evil Outbreak and Resident Evil Gaiden, but none of them really shifted the series' identity. By the early 2000s, the classic survival horror style was starting to bend under its own weight. Code Veronica, the Resident Evil remake, and Resident Evil 0 all carried the torch, but it was clear the formula was reaching its limits. I mean, the tension was still there, don't get me wrong, but the series needed something entirely new. Well, not until 2005.
I received special training via a secret organization working under the direct control of the president. I was to assume the responsibility of protecting the new president's family.
Cornel, why am I the one who always gets the short end of the stick? Yo.
And that, my friends, is when Capcom decided to drop one of the best pieces of media in fiction history: Resident Evil 4. A complete transformation that didn't just redefine the franchise, it reshaped modern gaming. The fixed camera angles? Gone. The tank controls? Gone. and for the first time ever, players felt fully in control of the chaos around them. Leon Kennedy was back, but not as a little rookie from RE2. This time he was confident, sharp, and ready to take on a village full of parasite-infected enemies with his precision, his speed, and still the occasional roundhouse kick. The over-the-shoulder camera changed everything. It made the action much more engaging, the encounters were way more dynamic, and the pacing was just tighter than anything the series had ever done before. RE4 wasn't just a new direction for the series, it was the moment the franchise saved itself. This was the reinvention Resident Evil needed. And if you want proof that the Resident Evil 4 was not just a good game but an actual worldwide phenomenon, look at the amount of times the game was re-released. GameCube, PlayStation 2, Wii, PC, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, VR, and even mobile. RE4 has been on more platforms than Skyrim, and that is really saying something. Capcom practically speedran the entire technology timeline just to keep selling this game. The game was even remade in 2023, but we'll get there in just a bit. Now, after Resident Evil 4's massive success, the future of the franchise looked unstoppable. Until it stopped. Resident Evil 5 didn't really start as a mess. In fact, on paper, it looked like a natural evolution of RE4. The same camera angles, the same shooting styles, the same tight encounters. But RE5 made one massive change that shifted everything. Co-op. Suddenly, the horror wasn't just diluted, it was divided between two players. Chris Redfield was back, with the arms the size of a small truck. The tone of the game followed his biceps, bigger, louder, and more explosive. RE5 had set pieces straight out of an action movie, not a survival horror game. Enter Sheva Alomar, Chris Redfield's partner. In the story, she's sharp, she's resourceful, and absolutely crucial. Perfect. In gameplay, I assure you, a rock would fare better. No, not the rock. A rock. Sheva's AI had issues. Sometimes she saved your life. Sometimes she spent precious ammo like her grandfather ran a gun factory. Sometimes she healed you. Just cause she felt like it. Not cause you needed it. Now, the problem wasn't Sheva as a character. She was great. In fact, I even hope she comes back in the future. The problem was the forced co-op design. By always having a partner, the tension that defined Resident Evil, the isolation, pressure, vulnerability, all gone. Every scary corridor now felt like a buddy cop field trip. Even if you weren't with a friend, it just didn't feel right. Especially with Chris built like Johnny Bravo, the game leaned harder into action. Explosions, shootouts, sunlit battlefields. The horror didn't just fade, it basically evaporated. Now, did it work commercially? Absolutely. The game sold insanely well. But tonally, this was the moment Resident Evil stopped feeling like Resident Evil. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't terrifying anymore. RE5 had tension in some places and also some genuinely iconic bosses, but the soul of the franchise, the fear, the helplessness, the claustrophobic pressure, all that was just slipping away. And then came the final nail in the coffin. The Resident Evil 5 just drifted into action. RE6 didn't drift, it accelerated, it swerved off the road, and then it tried to drive in 4 directions all at once. Instead of picking a tone and building on it, Capcom tried to make everyone happy by making a campaign for every type of player. Now, RE6 had 4 different campaigns. The first one was Leon and Helena, the almost horror campaign. This one was the closest thing to horror you could get. Dark corridors, zombies, slow pacing. For a while you think, oh, they found the horror again. But then the set pieces start detonating and the atmosphere crumbles. It's like trying to watch a horror movie during a fireworks show. The second campaign was Chris and Pierce, the full on military shooter. This campaign isn't even RE5 Redux, it's a full transformation. Squads, assault rifles, battlefield layouts, tactical chatter. It feels like Capcom temporarily forgot which franchise they were even making. Chris isn't even surviving horror anymore, he's starring in Michael Bay's newest action film. The third was Jake and Sherry, the hybrid experiment. This route tries to mix hand-to-hand combat, high-speed chases, and a stalker enemy. It's not like RE5 at all, it's more like Resident Evil trying out 3 new identities in one campaign. Jake's melee-heavy style alone makes it feel different from anything else in the series. Then finally came Ada Wong, the solo spy thriller with a late added stranger. Ada's campaign originally didn't even have co-op. Imagine giving your younger brother a controller that isn't even plugged in. That's exactly what Ada's co-op felt like. It was designed as a stealthy, puzzle-heavy espionage run, and then someone at Capcom remembered every campaign needs a co-op and slapped in a random guy that just follows you around, contributing nothing. No personality, no involvement, no story impact, just a warm body holding a gun. Resident Evil 6's problem wasn't just too much action. RE5 was action heavy but cohesive. RE6 was 4 different genres stitched together: horror, military shooter, chase thriller, and a stealth spy story, all sharing the same title screen. Every campaign had a different gameplay philosophy, it had different pacing, and it had different audience altogether. There was no unified identity, just ambition sprayed in every direction. Unlike RE5's co-op, which mainly hurt the atmosphere, RE6's co-op hurt the structure. Every campaign had to be designed around 2 players, even when the one player didn't belong there. Horror moments broke, chase sequences broke, stealth sections broke. It wasn't a co-op problem, it was a design coordination problem. The sales were high, but the impact was brutal. Fans were divided, critics were confused, and the franchise suddenly felt like it was in the middle of an identity crisis with no exit plan. RE6 wasn't a bad game in concept, it was too many games competing inside the same box. It had effort, it had scale, it had budget written all over it. But none of it fit together. And for the first time, the franchise didn't just lose its horror, but it lost its sense of self. By the end of RE6, everyone assumed that the franchise was done for. This wasn't just a stumble, it was the moment fans genuinely believed Resident Evil was finally done. That it had burned itself completely out. The identity was gone, the tone was lost, and every campaign felt like it came from a different universe entirely. People weren't asking what's next. They were asking, can this series even come back? For the first time in its history, Resident Evil looked tired. This was the lowest point. The point where even long-time fans hesitated to hope. While the main series was off experimenting with full action chaos, the Revelation games quietly did something important, and they kept the survival horror spirit alive. These games weren't the mainline direction, but they were the canary in the coal mine that told Capcom, horror still hits, don't abandon it. And then Capcom did something nobody expected. They didn't double down on action, they didn't try to copy RE4 again, they didn't chase trends, they wiped the slate clean.
Ethan. You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
Hello?
Hey, it's Ethan.
Oh, hey. You alright? You just disappeared the other night.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. It's Mia. She's not dead, she's alive. She's back.
They found her? How? What happened?
I don't know. Look, I don't know how, but she's back. She's back somehow. Maybe it's a prank, but she wants me to come and get her.
Where is she?
Dulvey, Louisiana.
Dude, it's been 3 years.
I know, but what if it is her? I have to find out what happened.
Resident Evil 7 wasn't just a sequel, it was a reboot of the franchise's soul. RE17 arrived with fanfare. It arrived like a stranger knocking on your door at midnight. Quiet, unsettling, and absolutely nothing like what came before it. After years of loud action, RE7 did the most radical thing imaginable. It just slowed everything down. The camera switched to first person, the setting became intimate, claustrophobic, and instead of global outbreaks and bioweapon armies, it grounded the horror in a single house with a single family. The Bakers weren't just enemies, they were characters. The fear didn't come from hordes of monsters coming at you from all directions, but from one man crashing through a wall and stalking you room by room. Every encounter just feels personal, it feels invasive, just as if the game was breathing down your neck. This wasn't just a return to horror, it was a return to feeling powerless. There's no superhuman crisp muscles, there's no co-op partner handing you extra ammo, there's no blockbuster set pieces. It's just you alone with a camcorder flashlight and the creeping realization that Resident Evil remembers exactly how to terrify people. RE7 proved something everyone had forgotten after RE6. That horror in this franchise doesn't need size. It needs intimacy, tension, and great atmosphere. The game didn't just reject the past, it honored it. Item management, locked doors, safe rooms, puzzles, all the DNA of classic Resident Evil, but seen through a modern lens. And the best part? It worked. The series wasn't dead, it just needed to shrink, refocus, and find its heartbeat again. Now, after RE7 reminded everyone what Resident Evil was supposed to feel like, Capcom didn't stop. They looked backward and realized the classics deserved a second life too. Resident Evil 2 Remake, the game that started the remake revolution as we see today. RE2 Remake didn't just succeed, it exploded. This was the game that proved you could recreate a classic without losing what made it iconic. It kept the heart of the original and rebuilt everything else from scratch and somehow managed to please both old fans and newcomers. It wasn't nostalgia bait, it was full reimagining, a perfect middle ground between RE7's horror atmosphere and RE4's smooth action design. After RE2 Remake dropped, every studio on the planet collectively just decided that, you know what, maybe it's time to remake our games as well. RE3 Remake, the short, stylish middle child. Resident Evil 3's remake came next. It was faster and it was flashier. It trimmed up the content, it sped up the pacing, and it turned Nemesis into more of a scripted threat than a roaming nightmare. Some fans wanted more, and that's fair. But what's here is polished, sharp, and modern. It served its purpose in the trilogy. It keeps the remake momentum going without letting the formula stagnate. And then Capcom did the unthinkable. They remade the Sacred Cow. Resident Evil 4 Remake shouldn't have worked. Remaking a game that's already considered close to perfect is usually how you end a career early. But Capcom pulled it off. It modernized the visuals, it deepened the characters, it strengthened the horror, and it tightened the pacing, all without losing what made the original legendary. There was no replacement for Resident Evil 4, it just complemented it. You see how usually people prefer to play the remakes over the original? Not with RE4. You play the original and the remake. Now, these modern remakes weren't random side projects, they were the final stage of Resident Evil's comeback. RE7 revived the franchise, the remakes rebuilt the foundation, and together they proved that Resident Evil could respect its past and evolve beyond it. Then we got Resident Evil Village, which didn't just follow RE7's footsteps. It walked in, looked around, and said, okay, you know what? What if we take the best parts of every era and actually make them work together? And guess what? It worked. Where RE7 was tight, claustrophobic, and relentlessly grounded, Village expanded everything. The world, the cast, the scale, all without losing the atmosphere that brought the franchise back. You still have the first person perspective and the feeling of vulnerability from Resident Evil 7, but now it came mixed with a gothic energy of the early games and the set piece confidence of RE4, with the villain personality of the franchise's best years. Lady Dimitrescu, the Four Lords, the Romanian village, everything felt larger, stranger, and more theatrical, but still rooted in horror. Village wasn't afraid to get weird, it never forgot that it was, at its core, a Resident Evil game. The gameplay flowed seamlessly between fear and adrenaline. One moment you're creeping through the dollhouse in one of the most disturbing sections in the entire franchise, the next you're taking on an army of lichens like you're starring in a grim fairy tale shooter. Village is where the franchise found its balance. It's not too small, not too explosive, not too nostalgic, and not too modern. It proved that Resident Evil did not need to choose between its identity and its evolution. It could be both. After Village wrapped up its massive gothic rollercoaster, Capcom didn't just move on. They released a new DLC, Shadows of Rose, that closed out the Winters family arc with a smaller, more introspective story. Instead of another huge adventure, the DLC focuses on Rose Winters, that is, the daughter of Ethan Winters, who was the protagonist in the last two games, with her struggle on who she is and what she carries. It brings back the psychological horror that RE7 perfected, mixes it with surreal environments, and ties up emotional threads left hanging after Village. It isn't about bigger monsters or bigger explosions anymore, it's about identity, trauma, legacy. All themes that fit perfectly into the journey Resident Evil has been on since its revival. Shadows of Rose gave closure, not to the franchise, but to a chapter of it. And now we're heading toward Resident Evil Requiem, the next major entry. Details are still limited because the game isn't out yet, but the direction is clear. Capcom isn't stuck in the past, and it's not retreating into pure horror or pure action. If anything, Requiem looks like the next evolution, the continuation of the balance Village established. A mix of fear, scale, and narrative depth that modern Resident Evil is finally confident enough to embrace. It isn't just another sequel. It's the next step in a franchise that has learned from every mistake and every redemption arc it's lived through. Resident Evil has taken us through mansions, police stations, villages, boats, castles, labs, and whatever RE6 was trying to be. And somehow it's still fun to watch the series reinvent itself every time it mutates. It's messy, it's chaotic, it changes direction more than a flashlight when you're being chased by a zombie. But that's exactly why it lasted. It refuses to stay predictable. So whether you came in during the classics, the remakes, the action era, or the giant vampire lady breaks the internet era, you're part of the chaos now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back in Raccoon City.
Thank you, Rebecca.